Hey everyone, it's been a long time since I've done any YouTube videos, and part of the reason is I haven't been doing a lot of work on cars or anything lately. Just thought I'd kind of do this one, a little bit of a change of pace. What I want to do is going to read the book I wrote. Now the book is called One More Embrace by Clinton Carey. Obviously it's a pen name. Just a little bit of background on that. I'm going to be doing this whole thing kind of unrehearsed, just going to read it as it goes. I don't have a script or anything. Really appreciate it if you have any comments or if you like the video at all. Just let me know. I'd love to see some comments on it. If you do like it and subscribe, that'd be great. It's a fairly long book, and it's novel length, just under 100,000 words. But kind of just wanted to go through this as a way of kind of dealing with some things that were going on in my life back when I wrote the book. So as I said, this is all going to be kind of unrehearsed, and once I get into the book, of course, it's going to be a lot easier, but a little bit of background on the book itself. I had a dream probably about 15 years ago, and the dream really stuck with me. It lasted probably about 10 years before I actually sat down and actually started writing it. The dream itself was so vivid. I remember the details of the dream right up until, well, to this day, I still remember everything that happened in it. Of course, the dream isn't long enough to do a full-length novel, so a lot of the stuff in there I kind of added in. A lot of stuff that kind of happened in my life, not necessarily to me, but to people I know. Some of the events that did happen in quote-unquote real life. And again, they were just things that kind of influenced me and went through with my life. Not all of it happened. Not all of it is true. In fact, this is a work of fiction, dealing mainly with the dream that I had. So the main part of the story is with the dream. The rest of the stuff is things that I had to do to pad the book, as it were, to bring in a little bit more interest, to make the story a lot more complete. Otherwise, you know, dreams that last seconds long in your head are definitely not enough to make a full-length novel. So I kind of based a little bit on things that happened in my life. Some things that were peripheral to what happened, some things that did happen. And at the time that I wrote it, it's kind of a big confession here, but I was undergoing severe depression. I was never to the point where I was suicidal, but I was to the point where I thought that if I was going to be driving my car at 100 kilometers an hour and fail to take a corner and go off a bridge, I just didn't care. With depression, there's a number of different ways that it can affect people. It's not always just feeling bad. It's not always not being able to have any energy or get out of bed, although that did affect me quite a bit. A lot of the things that occurred with me when I was under depression, I had a lot of anger. I had a lot of even paranoia. And when I wrote the book, it kind of helped me get out a lot of the feelings that I was kind of burying inside, and kind of helped me deal with a lot of the issues that until I wrote it, I didn't even know I had it buried inside. But anyway, so I just wanted to kind of go and get a little bit of information going on this book here. I am writing a second book. It's kind of a follow-up to the first. A little bit harder because I never had a dream about the second book. So this one is kind of completely coming right out of my twisted, dark little mind. And it's been a little bit more of a challenge to write, obviously, because I'm not dealing with something that I thought about for 10 years. Pardon the noise if you hear anything. I've got the screen door open because it's a little bit warm inside. You might see the doggo wandering around behind me there as well. But anyways, so what I'd like to do is kind of read this book, and I want to read the whole thing. I'll do probably a few chapters a night. I'll break it up into a number of different parts, and if you do like it, please just let me know. I'll carry on with doing the videos and see how it goes from there. It's kind of doing this just to see what kind of a reaction I'll get. The other thing is I kind of want to do this to kind of motivate myself to finish up my second book too. I'm about halfway finished that one right now, but I've got probably another 40,000 words minimum that I want to do. I have the idea written down in my head, not on paper, but I have the idea of what I want to write. I know where the stories are going to go. I just kind of want to do this to kind of help refresh the characters and give me a little bit more of what I want to finish the second book with. So anyway, without further ado, I guess I'll start this. And so this book is called One More Embrace by Clinton Carey. It's not a romance. It's got kind of a romance title, but that's one thing I've been kind of struggling with, is trying to figure out what kind of category to put it into. So if any of you have any kind of suggestions on what kind of category it could go, I've had some people say kind of just modern fiction. I have had a couple people say that it sounds like a romance. I really didn't intend it to be, but if you find that in there, please let me know, and we'll kind of carry on from there. But anyways, yes, the book is called One More Embrace, and by Clinton Carey. That's the name I use for writing, because nobody wants to read a book written by my real name. So without further ado, let's get started in there. So on the dedication page, I just wanted to give a couple of acknowledgements. For Anna, I wanted to thank her for never-ending encouragement when I was doing the book. She did do the initial proofreading. She encouraged me to keep writing, and she did keep encouraging me to finish it, which was a big plus. I also wanted to thank Paula, who gave me a solution for kind of a plot point that I was really stuck on. She has a background in psychology, and she is actually a practicing mental health counselor, so she was able to help me get across one hurdle that I was really struggling with on how to deal with a certain plot in the point in the novel. So I'd like to thank her for that. And finally, I want to thank Tara for proofreading, and she had some awesome suggestions for me as well. She was very encouraging to help me get it finished. She kind of gave me a little guidance on one of the characters. She was mad at me for a while for part of the book, and kind of appreciated everything that she was able to give me for help with the proofreading and a couple of character suggestions. So starting in here, we've got the book. It deals with about 3 different sets of characters, and they're all going to be kind of intertwining, as you'll see as we go along. So we'll just get right into it. March 28th, 2015, Dylan. On a sunny March day with not a cloud in the sky and the temperature bordering on pleasant, Dylan was in the basement playing with his toy cars while his dad was getting ready. His older sister Deanna was just out of the shower from the way it sounded, and she was stomping around upstairs looking for her purse, cell phone, and everything she managed to cram in the purse. Dylan had already finished getting ready to go out. He had his Sunday best clothes on. He hated wearing the tie, even though it was a clip-on, made to get the kind of suit that 9-year-olds usually hated to wear. He wanted to be playing with the cars outside, but his dad had forbidden him to go outside until they were all ready to leave. There was a draft or something, Dylan thought. It felt much colder in the basement than it usually did. It had happened a few times over the last couple of months. When he moved away from the window, it got warmer. That was about the opposite of what he expected to happen. It was just one more weird thing happening in a year of a lot of weird things happening. First, there was Dad losing his job, that girl from the church saying mean things about his dad, Mom moving out of the house, and now his family was getting ready to go out on a Saturday when they'd normally be doing yard work, or at the most going shopping. This draft, or whatever it was, caught up to him. He moved to another part of the room where he had his Hot Wheels track set up. Sure enough, it got colder there too. His dad called him then, and told him it was time to go, so Dylan started up the stairs. When he sees Deanna, he asks her if she was calling him too. She says no. It was strange. Dylan could have sworn he heard a girl's voice talking to him a moment ago. He didn't want to say anything. The last time he did, he had to go to that doctor that asked him all kind of personal questions, most of which he didn't know how to answer. The doctor made him feel uncomfortable, so he wasn't about to tell Dad or Deanna anything about hearing things again. They got into Dad's car. It was a beige 2008 Toyota Camry that the Toyota Corporation insisted was desert sand mica. Dylan loved cars. He had since he was a baby. He read the car magazines when Dad was finished with them, or at least he looked at the pictures, and by the time he was 7, he could name the make, model, and year of the cars on the highway. Well, most of them. The performance and luxury cars, for sure. Cars like this Camry didn't really excite him. There was nothing wrong with it. It just wasn't interesting to him. Dylan remembers when Dad had a much nicer car. He said he had to sell it last year because there was no reason of a big car like a BMW 760 Li. It was black with a black leather interior, tinted windows, and black and silver custom wheels. When it was clean, which Dad always made sure it was an amazing looking car. This Camry was just kind of there. Dad never really talked about why he sold the BMW, but Dylan knew there was more to the story than he was being told. Then there's the guy from the church, Nathan his name was. He used to have an old Dodge Stell sports car that he raced at the drag strip and sometimes at the shopping mall when the Autosport Club had slalom races there. He would let Dylan watch and even help sometimes as he worked on the engine or did paint and bodywork on it. He was a cool guy. He never picked on Dylan like some of Dylan's classmates did. He always listened to Dylan, and every now and then he'd tell Dylan stories about how he grew up and how to deal with kids who picked on him. Dylan wanted to be able to race cars when he was older too. As he got into the back seat and put on his seatbelt, he thought to himself that all things being equal, today was a lousy day for a funeral. Going back, September 8th, 2014, Nathan. The first day of school was always nerve-wracking for Nathan, mostly because his family moved so often due to his father being a minister in church. For one reason or another, his father never seemed to settle down at one church in one city for very long. So, like other school years, Nathan was starting his senior year at a new school in a new town. It was hard fitting in when you're always the new guy, and coupled with being a preacher's kid, he never had a clique to fit in with. He didn't care for sports much, though he was actually pretty good at them, so he wouldn't fit in with the jocks. While he got good grades without studying, he didn't have the earnestness and concentration on academics that a lot of the nerds had. He wasn't into goth, pop, hip-hop, dance, electronic, or dubstep music, so he never fit into those groups. He did like old school metal and classic rock, but at most schools he went to, it seemed only the stoners listened to that music. And while Nathan liked the occasional beer, he had never smoked pot and he wasn't interested in it. From what he saw, he wasn't missing much. Nathan liked cars and working on them, but he wanted to work on cars as a hobby, not a job. So the shop students didn't accept him either. Nathan liked racing too, but it was very expensive, and more than a part-time job after school would allow him to do more than occasionally. Over the summer, he had bought this old Stealth RT Turbo. The body was in good condition, but it needed fresh paint and a general refreshing on the interior. The worst part was the clouds of blue smoke that followed him when he drove. It burned oil something fierce. He hoped to make enough at an after-school job to rebuild it, and if there was enough left over, race it at the drag strip. At least this town had a drag strip and an auto sport club. Most of the towns he had lived in didn't. He did fit in with that crowd, but most of them people in the crowd were a lot older than him, and didn't think a snot-nosed kid would know anything about cars or racing. Plus, a lot of the races were on Sundays, and his dad usually made him come to church. His dad. There was another issue that complicated his life. He was a strict father. Most of the time he was fair, though. But there were some issues where he was just too close-minded and judgmental. Nathan didn't have a girlfriend, as he was usually shy around girls, so of course his dad thought he was gay. That was one of the things his dad was close-minded and judgmental about. The truth was, Nathan was just so painfully shy that he pretty much had to have a girl break the ice and talk to him first. Even then, he misinterpreted a lot of body language clues and hints from girls that they were interested in him. He had done some reading over the summer on how to get over shyness and anxiety, and while he wasn't sure the advice in the books was helpful, he was determined to give it a try. New year, new school, new Nathan, he hoped. Nathan was just arriving at the school parking lot, followed by a cloud of blue smoke from the exhaust of his car. He'd picked up the car cheap from a guy who had just lost interest in restoring it, and Nathan got it for about 10% on what the guy invested in it. And it sure needed a lot of work. It needed tires, these ones were on the last bit of tread, a windshield, the clutch was shifty, or not shifty when it was required. And most of the time he had to start driving in second gear because shifting from first to second without double clutching would grind the gears. The windshield was the cheapest part to start on. He'd have to get a job to pay for the rest of the work. If there was a mechanic shop that was looking for a laborer, maybe he'd be able to get in there. He'd apply after school. There was an open parking spot between a big lifted 4x4 Ford and a Porsche Cayman, and Nathan pulled in. As he retrieved his backpack and got out, someone said, "You can't park there, that's Mark's spot." Nathan looked around. There was no sign saying reserved parking or anything like that. Terrific, he thought. Not even in class, and he was in a confrontation. The lot was pretty full, and the only spots left open were on the far side of the lot, close to the teacher's parking area. It was almost 9 o'clock, and Nathan still had to get checked in, get his class schedule, and find his classes. "Hey, noob, did you hear me? I said that's Mark's spot. Better move that piece of crap before he gets here." Here goes. Time for the new Nathan to step up, he thought to himself. I don't see any reserve sign, and who's Mark? Mark's the guy that's going to kick your ass if you don't move it right now. And you are? Asked Nathan. Just a guy giving you a piece of advice, but hey, don't move it. Don't skin off my teeth. Well, thanks, but I'm all late already. I'll move it at break. Your funeral, said Nathan's friendly advisor. Hey, wait. Can you tell me where the closest door to the office is? Wow, you really are new, huh? Okay. It's closer if you go in the side door there. Probably too many people at the front entrance to get through. I always use the side door anyway. Turn left down the hall, second door on your right. Can't miss it. There's glass windows and a sign that says office above the door. Duh. My name's Jesse, by the way. You better make sure you get moved that thing at break, though. Mark's a hothead. No, thanks. My name's Nathan. Your name is dead meat if your car's still there after school. Nathan went in the side door, turned left, and almost went in the second door, but in time he saw it was actually the girls' restroom. Across the hall was the office. He looked over his shoulder and saw Jesse at the end of the hall start laughing and flash him a peace sign. In the office, Nathan signed some paperwork, got his locker room key, his class schedule, a map of the school, and a list of upcoming events the school was going to have. There was a school dance at the end of the month. Nathan doubted he'd go to that. First, there was the no girlfriend thing. Another was that he didn't know the first thing about how to dance. His first class was English, followed by social studies, algebra, his elective industrial arts, focus on mechanics, of course, and then psychology and finally drama. He had a spare class on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and phys ed instead of algebra as well on one of those days. He found his locker and he put his backpack in, and he looked at the map to see where his first class was. Hey, locker buddy, hi. I'm Afriel. Looks like I'm your neighbor. You look new. Nathan looked up from the map, and his eyes went wide. She was probably about 17, red hair, 5'6" or so, absolutely stunning. She reminded him of that elf queen in the Lord of the Rings movies, except she had red hair, and deep green eyes. She was smiling with wide lips and high cheekbones, and Nathan decided she reminded him more of a Viking shield maiden than an elf queen. He should probably stop reading all those fantasy novels. She had on a loose white blouse, which showed maybe just a bit too much cleavage to be considered decorous, and her miniskirt probably showed just a little too much leg. She had a book bag slung over her shoulder, and her long red hair covered the strap. Hello, first to new guy. I said, I'm Afriel. Oh, geez, yeah, hey, I'm Nathan. Well, hi, Nathan. I was afraid for a minute there you couldn't speak, and then who could I talk to between classes? She giggled, the tip of her tongue just poking between her teeth, and swept her hair over her other shoulder. Are you new? I don't think I've seen you around. We just moved here in July. And who's we? Well, my family. Me and my parents. Nate? Can I call you Nate? Nate, calm down. I don't bite, she said with a big smile. Great. New Nathan is a failed, Nathan thought to himself. He took a breath to calm his racing heart. He tried to sound way more confident than he felt. No, everybody calls me Nathan. I've never been called Nate before. Just then the first bell rang for class. Well, I'm going to call you Nate. You're too cute to be a Nathan. See you around, Nate, Afriel said as she waved her fingers over her shoulder at him. Yeah, see you around, Af, Nate called after her. She turned around as she walked, looked back at him, her mouth a round O of surprise. Then she smiled, stuck her tongue out at him playfully, and turned around and kept walking. Nathan smiled. He thought he recovered the situation pretty well as he started walking to his first class. As he walked, he glanced in a trophy case with a glass door and dark background. He wasn't too surprised to see his cheeks were bright, burning red. Almost the same hue as Afriel's hair. Okay, maybe the new Nathan wasn't quite as suave as he thought. He found his first class, and he took his registration information to the teacher. She looked at the form, ran her finger down a list of names, and told him to pick a desk in the third row. As he looked at the class, he saw Jesse from out in the parking lot. Jesse gave him a grin and one of those upward nod and tilt of the head thing that acknowledges you recognize the person, but you're not quite sure what to make of them yet. There was only one desk left in the third row, and right beside the empty desk was a Viking shield maiden with red hair and a mischievous grin. Hi, Nate. Well, this is going to be a fun year. September 8th, 2014. David. David Foreman got out of bed a little later than usual. His flight didn't leave until after 12, and it wasn't likely to leave without him. He was flying the plane after all. He still had plenty of time to get ready and go to the airport. His kids, Dylan and Deanna, had already left for school. Shannon, his wife, was downstairs, humming some song she must have heard on the radio. At least it wasn't any tune he recognized, so he wasn't sure where she had heard the song. He stretched, got out of bed, had a look out the window from the master bedroom balcony window. It looked to be a beautiful day. There wasn't a cloud in the sky, and it was supposed to be an unlimited ceiling for takeoff. He could see almost all of the city from up here on the hill. The only part of the city he couldn't see was the neighborhood he had grown up. It was a poor side of the city with mostly townhomes and trailer parks. David had studied hard, worked through college, graduated flight school, and worked his way up to flight captain at the regional airline where he worked. He loved the job, and word was that he was in consideration for the manager position opening up as the present manager and owner of the airline was retiring. He didn't want to count on getting the position, but he had high hopes. He'd be managing 20 pilots and co-pilots, as well as manage the logistics for the maintenance crews. Considering the airline was so small, relatively speaking, it was surprising to many that it was as successful as it was. Most of that was probably due to the current managers and owners being so respected in the community. After showering and packing his overnight bag, Dave went to the kitchen and kissed Shannon good morning. She had breakfast already made and was waiting with a glass of orange juice at the table. "You're too good to me, you know," he told her. "Yeah, I know, but you make up for it in other ways," she answered, giving him a wink, putting her arms around him as she sat down. "So where are you going today?" "Well, I'm flying to Vancouver, then Victoria, and finally we'll be in Calgary in time for supper. I'm afraid I'm going to have to stay overnight there, but I should be home by noon tomorrow." "Oh no, I was hoping you'd be home earlier. Deanna has to go pick up her books and whatever instrument she's going to play in band this year after school." Deanna was extremely gifted when it came to music. She could play 4 instruments well already and was always wanting to learn new ones. She had even begun trying to compose her own music. "I know, I wanted to be here too, but if I make it back by noon, I should have plenty of time to make it. It's just frustrating when there's always a chance there might be delays. Well, if everything goes right, I should be home a lot more often if I get Gord's job when he retires. They tell me I'm the top choice, but Gord doesn't retire until the end of November. Keep your fingers crossed." "There's no such thing as luck, David Foreman. You deserve the job, you're qualified for it, and you've given them 15 years of solid work. I can't see anyone else getting it." "I hope so, hon. I better run, though. I wanted to check if the airspeed Python was replaced on the Piper before I left." He kissed Shannon again. You smell good. I don't know how you can roll out of bed and look like an angel without even trying." Shannon nuzzled his neck and reached down to his waist, pulling him closer. "Airspeed Python? Whatever that is, are you sure you want to leave right away? I can make it worth your while." "I'm afraid so. I'll see you tomorrow as soon as I can. I'll miss you." He took his overnight bag from under the table, he stood back up, and he headed for the front door. "I love you. Have a good night." "Bye. See you tomorrow. Love you bunches." David got into his car. It was a fairly new black BMW 760 Li. He had saved for almost a decade to buy it, and even so he still had to finance almost half of it. He and Shannon had had a few conversations about it. She felt it was a little ostentatious, but he'd always wanted a BMW, and the biggest one they built was what appealed to him. Besides, Shannon had a BMW X6 of her own. He finally convinced her that they needed a big car when Dylan got to be 8 years old. For such a big car, it had a surprising amount of performance with a twin-turbo V12, handled much better than expected for a car of its rather ponderous size. He loved getting it on the highway on the way to the airport and surprising young guys in their sports cars when they tailgated him. Most of them couldn't keep up once the big BMW accelerated away. David tuned his satellite radio to the talk show he usually listened to. It was a format that they used to be called shock radio, but the host was actually a lot more tame than people thought, and in addition to being an exceptionally good interviewer, his public persona was much different than his private life. Contrary to what many people thought, the radio host was still married to his wife of 18 years and never fooled around with his female fans. David enjoyed the irreverent humor on the show, even though he usually listened to one of the rock stations when one of the kids were in the car. The morning show, the host was interviewing an actress. She had been an adult movie star, but was now beginning to act in more mainstream films. Surprisingly to many of the listeners, she proved to be intelligent, witty, and quite articulate. When she had graduated university, she was deeply in debt and left pregnant from an abusive ex-boyfriend. After making a name for herself, she found the most difficult thing in getting into mainstream movies was the stigma of having formerly been in adult movies. David was fascinated with her story. She didn't fit any of the preconceived stereotypes he had of women who had done those kind of films. The interview was far from over as he pulled into the secure parking for the airline employees, and he wanted to stay in the car to hear the rest of the interview, but hadn't the time. Oh well, he thought. They rerun the show 24 hours a day, so he'd eventually catch a repeat. After getting out of the car, checking with aircraft maintenance, yes, the airspeed Python had been replaced on the Piper, and entering the terminal, he headed for his manager's office. "Good morning, Mr. Wilkes. How was your weekend?" "Hi, David. Oh, fine, fine. I hate getting up at all hours of the night, though. Damn prostate. Don't get old, David. It sucks." David laughed and replied, "True, but it beats the alternative." He and Gordon Wilkes then reviewed David's flights for the days and discussed Gordon's upcoming retirement. "You know, Dave, I'm thinking I might retire sooner than later. The missus and I thought we'd like to go to Cuba in late October instead of November. Then we'd have time to visit the grandkids for American Thanksgiving in Seattle. We can always head back there after Christmas. We'd just be a little less rushed that way. Which brings me to what I think you might be expecting. You've been a fantastic employee and you've shown a lot of leadership in the company. You have a gift for managing people. They like you, you're fair in the way you treat them, and it doesn't hurt that you volunteer at that church you go to. We're a family-run business and we really want to keep the operation focused on family values. I haven't made a final decision yet, but I wanted to let you know that you are my first choice to replace me when I'm done here. Of course, we need to get approval from the rest of the board, but I don't see anything that would be an impediment. Don't go buying a Ferrari just yet, but I think you'd make a valuable addition to the board and to the company, Gordon said with a grin. Well, thank you, Mr. Wilkes. It means a lot to hear that from you. I hope when the decision is made, I'll be able to meet your expectations. Okay, enough of that blather. You're making me blush. Don't you have a plane to fly? Yes, sir. I'm just going to go file a flight plan. Don't sir me, David. We've worked together far too long for that. Gordon got out from behind his desk and clapped David on the shoulder as he shook his hand. Have a good flight, Dave. I'll see you tomorrow. David had a hard time concealing his smile as he made a cup of coffee in the coffee room. He took a muffin and an orange juice for a snack on the flight. Madge, Gordon's wife and administrative assistant, made a much better muffin than anything bought from a store or supplied on the airline menu, and he went into the planning room. First, though, he picked up his cell phone and he made a call. Shannon was on the phone when the call waiting beeped, and she told the caller to hang on for a sec. Hon, I just wanted to call before I left. I just had a talk with Mr. Wilkes, and things look really good. Let's take the kids out for supper after Deanna's shopping trip to celebrate. Are you sure, David? Don't you want to be positive before we tell them? No, maybe. It might be better to wait until we're sure. But still, let's go for dinner tomorrow. We'll say it's Deanna's return to band this year, or for Dylan starting intermediate school. Let's just go out. We can decide tomorrow what to call the celebration. In the meantime, see if we can get a reservation at that restaurant you like. You know, the one overlooking the river? Of course I know the restaurant. That was our first date. All right, then. I have to go. I need to file a flight plan and get ready to go, and I'll see you soon. Love you. Love you too. Bye. Shannon returned to the call she was on when David phoned. Hello? Yes, it was just him. Where were we? September 8th, 2014. Afriel. It was the first day of school. School started later this year, and Afriel's alarm clock went off at 6:30. She doesn't really need to get up until 7, but she likes to have a little time to herself before her mother gets up. If she gets up. Lately, her mother hasn't even been awake when Afriel gets out of bed and makes breakfast. She hits the snooze alarm once. That extra 7 minutes always feels more restful than the entire night of sleep. If only she could get her brain to turn off and relax while she waits for the alarm to go off again. She's got big plans for this year of school. She's positive everyone will know her name before summer break comes around. For better or worse, in her opinion, she's been an outcast for most of her school years. She craves attention, and sometimes she'll do something stupid to draw attention to herself. Last year, she tried to keep a low profile, and for most of the time she went unnoticed by the other students, except for the guys. Afriel had long, thick red hair, pale skin that would freckle almost immediately when she went into the sun without sunscreen, and she always had the sense that the other girls were jealous of her looks. She had tried to let herself look less attractive by not showering, not using makeup or deodorant, and dressing in town a couple of years before this, but all that did was make the other girls mock her. It didn't stop the guys from asking her out either. One of our junior high school teachers had told her that she should try modeling, so she inquired at a modeling school about taking some classes. They took her money that she had worked hard for, washing dishes after school and on weekends at a pierogi restaurant. She never wanted to see another pierogi in her life. But while taking their money, she was never offered photo shoots or contract work, even if it was sponsored by the modeling school. Finally, she asked the manager why she wasn't getting any offers, and she was told, honey, you're beautiful, you've got a good head on your shoulders, but the problem is your shoulders are about 3 inches too short to make it in the modeling world. You can't always wear heels to make yourself taller, but I think you'd do well in lingerie shoots. You're too young to do that, though, so maybe check with us when you're 18. That was almost 2 years ago, right after her school year of slumming. Afriel was disappointed, more for feeling like she wasted her money at the school than anything else. But after some reflection, she realized that the school had done a lot for her self-esteem, and the no showering, no makeup, frumpy-clothed Afriel was in the past. Unfortunately, it made the other girls in the school even more jealous, and the guys were even more persistent in asking her out. If she turned them down, she was called a bitch and a slut. If she went out with them, they would make up stories of their conquest of her, whether she slept with them or not. The ones she did sleep with would never call for a third or fourth date, and they called her a slut behind her back. The ones she didn't sleep with would tell everyone they had slept with her anyway, and would also call her a slut behind her back. One of her high school teachers had asked her to stay after school one day and recommended counseling about the bullying, but Afriel shrugged it off. She said she didn't care about her reputation, she didn't have much of a reputation to care about, And if everyone was going to think she was a slut, why not at least have some fun with guys anyway? It was like a psychology teacher had told her once. If someone calls a kid a thief long enough, even if the kid never stole anything in his life, eventually the kid figures they might as well be a thief because everyone thought about that anyway. Afriel saw the logic behind that and in a twisted way almost believed it herself. In her mind, if everyone was calling her a slut, she might as well be, because no one else would think any less of her anyway. It's hard to go lower than the ground people walk on. So while not really being popular, she had no shortage of dates on weekends, even if there was never a relationship that followed. It didn't matter. Afriel didn't think she had any relationships worth having anyway. Her and her mother hadn't been getting along since she was a child. She felt her mother barely tolerated her in the trailer, and Afriel swore she'd move out next summer. She had no idea what she would do for work because she'd still only be 17 until October of next year, and she'd be graduating in June. That was another thing that was a problem between her mother and her. She got good grades in school without even trying. Even still, it was never enough for her mother. She got 99% on a history test once, and she was proud of it. She showed the test to her mother, and the only reaction she had was a shrug, and Afriel was told that she should have gotten 100%. Afriel had been crushed. Nothing she ever did ever measured up for her mother. And forget about college. There was no money saved up. Her father hadn't been in her life since she was about 3 or 4 years old, and none of the succession of uncles her mother had stay over ever amounted to anything for a relationship with her mother either. They usually stayed long enough to drink all the alcohol in the trailer. Some would stay until their supply of weed ran out, but it's rare for them to stay for longer than a month at most. Consequently, most of the time it was just Afriel and her mother trying to avoid each other in a 2-bedroom mobile home. The alarm went off again, and Afriel got out of bed. She took off her socks and sweatshirt. Even in summer, she slept in socks and a heavy sweatshirt that reached her knees. She just felt more comfortable and secure sleeping like that. The only concession she made in hot weather is where she wore pajama bottoms or was naked under the sweatshirt. Last night was not too warm, so it was panties and a bra underneath the sweatshirt. She went into the hallway, looked towards her mother's bedroom door, and quickly went into the bathroom. She wanted to beat her mother into the bathroom because sometimes her mother would purposefully take forever in there, making Afriel late for school just to spite her. She didn't need worry about that this morning, though. She could still hear her mother snoring in the bedroom. Afriel had a quick shower, then walked naked to her room where she got some fresh underwear and began combing out her hair. She thought she heard a noise in the kitchen, but she didn't think twice about it. It couldn't have been her mother. She could still hear her snoring. Probably it was a stupid cat jumping off the table. The cat was moody, to put it mildly. One day the cat was weaving around her legs and purring, and the next the cat would swat her in the head and run away when she's trying to read a book on the couch. Usually with her mother watching some insipid game show or soap opera on TV and smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. She put on her makeup and picked out a miniskirt and a dressy blouse for her first day of school. She noticed that the skirt was a little shorter than last year and the shirt was getting tighter across her bust. She wasn't sure she wasn't growing anymore, at least she didn't think so. And besides, she couldn't afford new clothes yet this year anyway. Everything she had earned was stashed away for college. She packed her books into her book bag and went into the kitchen to get her breakfast. That was when she realized she could smell coffee already. In the kitchen was a guy in his jockey shorts, brewing a pot of coffee and rummaging through the fridge. When he heard her, he turned around and said, "Ah, there she is. You must be Afriel. Your mother told me you might be up early, and I thought I'd like to meet you before you left, and I certainly liked what I saw a few minutes ago." Afriel's mouth dropped open, and she blushed furiously. If she had known one of her mother's friends was up, she would have put on a towel to walk to her bedroom. And this guy, he was actually leering at her. He had to have seen her walking naked to her bedroom. "Who the hell are you?" She decided to go on the offensive. She didn't want him thinking she was someone he'd hastily take advantage of. "I'm Mike. Your mother told me to tell you I'm your uncle, but I can clearly see you're too old to believe that. You're not a little girl anymore, are you? Your mother told me you were too young when I asked about you, but you don't look too young to me." He began walking toward her, a cup of coffee in his hand and a predatory look in his eyes. His jockeys were getting disturbingly tight in the front as well. Afriel took a deep breath, calmed herself, tried not to look scared. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. "Well, Mike, you're right about me not thinking you're my uncle, but I don't think you want to do anything you might regret. My mother has a temper. We redheads are like that. Might as well play up the stereotype," she thought. "What's to regret? We're just having a conversation here. I'm trying to be friendly." He looked over his shoulder back at the toaster. "Can I cook you up some toast, an eggo? You have any toaster strudels?" Putting that crap in a toaster isn't really cooking, you know. "Come on, I'm just trying to be a good host." Host, huh? Afriel thought. She was the one that lived here, not this idiot. Mike was almost within arm's reach of her now, and Afriel shifted her backpack off her shoulders and put it on the floor, holding it by the strap. "So, Mike, do you think I'm old enough to have a sip of that coffee?" she asked. while grinning and tilting her head to the side. She could tell by the way he smiled that he thought she was flirting. Men were so predictable. "Of course you look old enough for a lot of things." He began handing her the coffee, and just as it was almost to her, she flipped the coffee cup into his face with her left hand, and with her right she swung her book bag up and hit him in the chest, knocking him to the floor. He yelled as the hot coffee hit him in the face and frantically tried to rub it out of his eyes. By now, Afriel was already running for the door. "You bitch! I'll kill you, you little bitch! I've been called a lot worse by a lot better than you, asshole." And with that, Afriel was out the door, running through the neighbors' yards and hopping fences. Fortunately, her bus was just pulling up to the stop when she arrived, and she jumped on and ducked below a windowsill at a seat near the front. She peeked out over the sill and looked down the street as her bus pulled away. Mike, if that was his real name, was standing on the doorstep looking up and down the road, but Afriel was nowhere to be seen. His jockey's definitely looked a little looser in the front now, too. She was a little worried about what would happen when she got home, but only a little. This wasn't the first time and likely wouldn't be the last time that one of her uncles hit on her. Ever since she had hit puberty, her uncles were much too attentive for her comfort. She just hoped her mother was too stoned or drunk when she got home to make a big deal about it. The bus pulled up down the block from the school, and Afriel got off. She slung her book bag over her shoulder and began walking to the front entrance. A couple of guys in an old Pontiac GTO whistled and catcalled her as she drove by, but she ignored them. Coming toward her was a white sports car that trailed a cloud of blue smoke. She hoped the person driving was a junior, because if he or she wasn't, the guys from the mechanics class were really going to give them a hard time. Most of the students here had parents that bought them their first cars, and anyone driving something that old or in that rough a condition was sure to be something that students bought themselves, or maybe they just had poor parents. She crossed the street mid-block to get to the same side of the street as the school. It was usually about now that the butterflies in her stomach hit. She reached down into herself and dug up the figurative masks that she wore at school to make herself look hard and unfeeling. If she let any of these people know what was going on in her life, or if she let down her guard for even a second, she knew they'd exploit any weakness she had. So she fronted herself as a person who didn't care what others thought, and only concentrated on getting through the day with as little interaction as possible. Which wasn't always easy, of course. Even with the dates she had, she never talked to the guy first. He always had to approach her, and it seemed that they always did. There was that time last year, too, where a girl had asked her out. She had no idea that some girls thought she was attractive. She just assumed they were all jealous of her and hated her. Out of curiosity, she agreed to a date, but instead of going to a movie or dinner or anything else, the other girl just took her to her bedroom to watch a DVD. Inevitably, the other girl began kissing her and slid her hand under her shirt. Afriel went along for a while, but before things got out of control, she felt uncomfortable and stopped it. Sure enough, over the next few weeks, Afriel was again a slut, but this time she was also accused of being a lesbian. The other girl never spoke to Afriel again, and thankfully, after about a month, all of the same-sex rumors went away. She never had another desire to be with another girl after that. Coming in the front entrance, she saw Amanda. Amanda was the only girl that ever seemed to be friendly with her. She even suspected this Amanda would eventually want to try to date Afriel, because she only began being friendly after her lesbian incident last year. They had known each other in the sense that they were aware that they'd been in some of the same classes since elementary school, but they were not hanging around in the same group of friends until last year. So far, Amanda seemed to be just as how she presented herself, just a friendly girl. They didn't have too many classes together, and they never tried to arrange their class schedules to be the same. They weren't that close. She was the closest thing to a friend Afriel had at school, though. "Afriel, hi, how was your summer?" "About the same. You?" "Oh, it was pretty good. Jeff and I spent a couple of weeks out at Julie's parents' cabin at the lake. We did some water skiing and swimming. You should have been there." Jeff was Amanda's brother, and one of the few guys Afriel had never dated. He was a really nice guy, but she probably wouldn't go out with him, even if she asked. She felt he was too good for her. If she was being honest, she felt Amanda was too good for her, too. But that didn't stop Amanda from being nice. "Jeff got a motorcycle over the summer, too, a Yamaha street bike. He's been working on customizing it all summer." Amanda laughed. "Every spare penny he has goes into getting parts for it. Oh, and he met someone, too. She's going over to the school over at Avondale. They met at the corner store at the lake. He's pretty nuts about her." "Oh, cool. What's her name?" Nice, Afriel thought. I don't have to worry about Jeff this year, I hope. Mason. Could you believe it? I've never heard of the name Mason for a first name, especially for a girl. But she's really nice. Yeah, as long as Jeff likes her, that's all good. Hey, do you have Mr. Sterling for homeroom? I don't know yet. I just got here. I was a little rushed this morning leaving, so I didn't go over my schedule. Just a sec. I'll check at the office. Afriel went to the office and asked for her schedule. She saw who she thought was some new guy getting a lock and a class schedule, too. She didn't recognize him, but at this age, guys could change a lot over the summer. He left while she was waiting for her schedule, and he barely glanced at her on the way out. He was looking at a map of the school, then stood in the doorway looking left and right before making his way into the hall. Yep, definitely a new guy, she thought. She got her schedule and she met Amanda at the hall again. Hi, here it is. Yeah, I have Mr. Sterling for homeroom. Great, we're in the same class. We'll be besties. Amanda was almost laughing as she talked. Afriel liked the idea of being in the same homeroom, but she wasn't sure she was that excited about it. She knew Amanda meant well. She was just so excitable. It was kind of endearing, actually. She wished she could have a fraction of the enthusiasm that Amanda had. Afriel couldn't help but smile then. That old saying that a smile could make your day did seem to hold true when Amanda was around. She was just so optimistic and positive, a person couldn't help but be being in a better mood when Amanda was there, and it was infectious. Since Afriel had been spending time with Amanda, she'd begun being more positive as well. Okay, I'll better go put my stuff in my locker, but I'll see you in class. Afriel's locker was down a different hall than Amanda's. Maybe she'd ask to get a locker reassignment later, but for now she just had to get ready for class. She walked around the corner of the hallway toward the gym side entrance where her locker was located, and there, right beside her locker, was the new guy that she had seen in the office. You know, she thought, when you look at him closer, he's actually pretty cute. He had some new black denim jeans, a business casual shirt that had maybe one too many buttons done up, and his hair was maybe just a touch longer than was currently the style. She couldn't help noticing that he had big brown eyes, dark hair, and sort of a big nose. Not huge, mind you, just a little, let's say, prominent. After speaking with Amanda, she was looking forward to the year and was in a good mood, so she decided just this once she'd try not to be so standoffish from the people around her. Hey, he was new, so she'd be friendly to him. If there was anything Amanda had taught her, it was that just being friendly to someone could make a difference. Hey, locker buddy, I'm Afriel. Looks like I'm your new neighbor. You look new. September 8th, 2014. Shannon. Shannon had a meeting for lunch. She put on one of her sundresses, even though it was a little cool in the morning, made sure her hair was styled, and checked her perfume. She didn't want it to be too strong. Some people had sensitivities to fragrances. Everything was good, she thought so herself. She worked out at the gym 3 times a week, and for a 37-year-old, she could still pass for 25. She eschewed the typical lady exercises, except for yoga. What use was a spin class when she had a perfectly good mountain bike in the garage? She'd rather ride on the trails than sweat in an indoor club anyway. In winter, she'd cross-country or downhill ski at the resort just down the highway in the next town. As a result, she was well-toned, athletic, and yet stayed away from looking bulky, even though she could deadlift more than a lot of the guys in the gym. She went into the garage, opened the garage door with the remote, and backed her BMW X6 out of the garage. She made sure to wait in the driveway until the door closed again. When she was a girl, her family had had the house broken into, and she was particularly security conscious ever since. Driving down the hill toward town, she stopped at a curb and talked to one of the neighbors who was out walking her Pomeranian. Yappy little dog, but kinda cute, she thought. She preferred bigger dogs like Rottweilers and Dobermans. But Dylan was afraid of dogs and Deanna was allergic to cats, so the closest the family got to having pets was an aquarium in the living room. She chatted with a neighbor for a few minutes, then she drove on. She was still early for her lunch appointment, so she stopped at the shopping mall. At one of the jewelry stores, she saw a gorgeous diamond and gold necklace. She tried it on, and it was a match for her dress, and the gold offset her gold-green eyes perfectly. The price tag, though, well, she could always put it on the credit card and pay it over time. She hesitated, then gave the necklace back to the salesperson. She said she'd think about it and walk back into the mall. She browsed a few stores, but her mind was set on that necklace. She kept picturing it and thought that he'd love to see her wearing it. He'd always said he loved her eyes, and the way the sparkling gold and diamonds lit her eyes up was more than flattering. She sat outside a coffee kiosk and took a newspaper to read while she waited for some time to pass. Nothing good in the newspaper. Every article seemed to be about war, politics, or some lame celebrity gossip. She absolutely hated the gossip. There were so many more important things in life than worrying who had plastic surgery, who was going into rehab again, or the latest scandal about a particularly family that was constantly in the news and gossip columns and were only famous for being famous. It was all so trite and boring. She finished the paper in her coffee and dropped the paper cup in the garbage, returning the newspaper to the rack in front of the kiosk. It was still 45 minutes before her appointment, so she went into the jewelry store again. The necklace was just beautiful, and she had to have it. She asked the salesperson if there was any way she could get a sale price on it. She was told that it had been on sale the previous week, but the sale was over. She shamelessly flirted with the salesperson, hoping to be able to whittle the price down or honor the sale price from the previous week. It didn't work too well. She was told it would go on sale again in a month, but she didn't want to wait that long. She sighed. Okay, I'll take it. Thank you, ma'am. She hated being called ma'am. Would you like that wrapped? No, I'll wear it out. Well, thank you so much. That'll be $35.78 with tax. Will that be cash, debit, or credit? Credit. The necklace felt heavy on her breast, but she loved it. She couldn't keep her fingers from caressing it. When she got to her SUV, she admired it in the outside mirror. When she got in, she tilted the rearview mirror down to look at it some more. Maybe she'd regret spending the money later, but for now she was thrilled with the purchase. She started up the SUV and drove out of the parking lot. Turning left toward the center of town, she still couldn't keep her fingers off the necklace. Yeah, she was in luck. There was a parking space almost directly in front of the restaurant, and she was still a bit early. She told the waiter that she'd be meeting someone and took a table near the window. She ordered another coffee, this would be her third of the day already, and asked that a latte with double sugar be bought for her guest. There was complimentary bread rolls and biscuits, but she was watching her carbs and she put the bread basket on the neighboring table. Just as she finished doing that, her guest walked in the entry door. Spotting her, Shannon's guest came towards her with arms outstretched and a wide smile. "Shannon, my dear, you look fabulous." "Is that a new necklace?" Shannon stood, opened her arms, and embraced her guest. "Yes, it is. Do you like it?" "Of course I do. Although anything on you looks beautiful." Shannon smiled even more, leaned in, and gave him a kiss. She could taste the cigarettes on his tongue. That was one of the only things that she didn't like about him, but he was more than generous in bed, and even more generous with his wallet. He actually held her chair for her when she sat down. It was little things like that attracted her to him. Well, that, and he still had a full head of white hair and was in reasonably good shape. He dressed only in the finest clothes, whether it was a suit or khakis and a golf shirt. He always had new clothes, too. He probably spent over $1,000 a month on clothes, and for his age, he was certainly virile. He claimed it was because she was so beautiful, but she had a feeling those little blue pills had more to do with it than her beauty. She knew she was good-looking, but there were times when he even wore her out in the bedroom. He'd never seen her home or met her family, and that was the way things would remain. One of these days she was going to have to tell David she was leaving, but she had to wait for the right time. Maybe after he got that promotion and the hefty raise in pays that he'd get. She'd ask for half of his wages in lieu of taking the kids and child support. Hell, even a third of his wages would be plenty for her to make ends meet. And, of course, Malcolm had plenty of money to take care of her, and she'd be able to start her business with his seed money. They'd been making these plans for a few months now. She couldn't tell anybody about this, not even her closest friends. Of course, her closest friends weren't really all that close. She wouldn't need them after she left anyway. She and Malcolm were planning to move to Costa Rica, where he'd run his investment firm long distance until it sold, and she'd open her art gallery near the beach and cater to tourists. "You ordered my latte, thank you. Shall we have something to eat, or shall we just go to the condo? Maybe we could order in." He waggled his eyebrows at her. She hated that too. He meant it to be endearing, but she just found it creepy. He was a little too old to be acting the playful Lothario in her opinion, but as always she put up with it. She'd met him at an art show in town while David was on an overnight flight to Toronto. She had a couple of paintings on display, but nobody was buying. Malcolm had come by her display 2 or 3 times before he talked to her. She'd been wearing a low-cut tank top with a painter's smock over top. She thought if she looked like a struggling artist, people might be more willing to buy her paintings. Hopefully none of them had seen her drive up in a BMW. "Are these yours?" "Yes, of course." "And if one were to purchase them, how much would one be paying?" "Well, I'm asking $400 for the large one and $300 for the smaller ones," answered Shannon. "But of course the price is negotiable," she added quickly. Malcolm looked over the paintings and pretended to scrutinize the brushstrokes. He looked closely at each of them and put them down in front of him between his feet at the art display table. "They're quite good, Miss... Shannon. You can call me Shannon." "All right, Shannon. Well, my dear, I'm a bit of an art aficionado. I'm not a critic, and I'm not well versed with all the masters and whatnot, but I know what I like, and I like these. I won't pay $400 and $300 for them, though. I'll give you $600 for the large one and $500 for each of the small ones." Shannon was shocked. She'd never hoped to make that much with her first sales, but she readily accepted as cash. He told her he'd like them delivered to his home if she'd be so kind as to deliver them herself. Then he gave her a business card with his home address written on the back. It was in a gated community where the smallest, shabbiest house was worth over $5 million. Of course, she agreed to deliver them any time, whenever he wanted. He asked her to keep his purchases behind the table so no one else would want to increase his offers, and she agreed to that stipulation. She had promised to deliver them the next afternoon. David wouldn't be home until the evening, and she would have time to deliver the paintings and still be home to greet David as he came home. She'd talk him into going out for dinner so she wouldn't have to cook for the kids. The next day was hot and sunny, and she met Malcolm at his huge house. Mansion, really. It had a tennis court, swimming pool, was beautifully landscaped, and even had a fountain in front of the semicircular driveway. He was only wearing swimming trunks and a robe when he met her at the door. He apologized, saying he hadn't expected her so soon. She had called from the gate, but he hadn't had time to change yet, as he was giving instructions to the gardener. Of course, she said it was no problem. He helped her take the paintings from her BMW, and they put them in what he called his art room. For an art room, it was pretty empty, she said jokingly. He agreed, then told her that if she was willing, he'd like to have her come by and use the room for painting. Of course, he'd pay her for her paintings, but he'd like her to paint what he suggested. She didn't have any other offers for her painting, so she agreed. They made plans for her to come over once or twice a week at the start. By the third time, he suggested she paint herself in the nude using a full-length mirror. He offered her $5,000 for that. She was a little shocked at the suggestion, but $5,000. She couldn't turn that down. She painted herself the following week, and she slept with him for the first time that day. I think we should go to the condo, Malcolm. You know we wouldn't want to disturb the gardener, she said with a salacious grin. That's it. So that's it for the September 4th. We'll pick up next time with September 8th. That's kind of as we're going here. Still one more character to be introduced, but for that I'll call it there and do another chapter tomorrow. So thanks for listening. Again, appreciate any of your comments, and if you like it, just give me a thumbs up or let me know in the comments. Have a good night.